So I have a 49ers update for you this morning, and I'm sure that most of you will like this. The Brandon Aiyuk situation, it's essentially a lock for the 49ers and for Brandon Aiyuk to become a very, very well compensated receiver in a San Francisco 49ers uniform. For the first time since the 49ers packed their bags and left the facility for the offseason, Brandon Aiyuk spoke publicly about his contract situation, and two things became very clear. He's in the building, which is huge. He's actually working out voluntarily at Levi's Stadium, and his people are talking with the 49ers. We already knew that part, but Brandon Aiyuk actually expressed a desire publicly to sign a long-term contract with the 49ers. Let's have a listen to his appearance last night.
They're trying to get work done. They're trying to get work done. I mean, they trying to get work done. That's all I can say. Y'all know how it gets. I don't even want to get too far into that. You know, I'm just trying to get like what Ocho just said. I'm trying to get what I deserve. I felt like this season playing football, I figured out who I was as a person, as a player, what I bring to the table, what I bring to the locker room, what I bring to the organization, and just the value I hold when I walk in that building, because people gonna follow me because I've done it the right way since I've been in that building from the first day I walked in there to when I was in there earlier this morning. Done it the right way. So, and if they don't see it worth in that, that's all it is. That's all it is. It ain't nothing else. It ain't nothing else besides that. But I can't, like I said, I can't get into it. We got professionals working on both sides, so hopefully we can come to a professional agreement and continue to play professional football.
We've got professionals working on both sides. Hopefully we can come to a professional agreement and continue playing professional football. In that simple line, Brandon Aiyuk has publicly expressed his desire to stay with the 49ers for a long time on a long-term contract. This is already very different than the Deebo Samuel situation. Deebo Samuel was radio silent when it went to media interviews. In fact, he had publicly requested a trade. Everything was cryptic with Deebo Samuel. This is extremely over the table, everything that's happening here with Brandon Aiyuk. He is overtly saying he wants to be part of the 49ers. Of course, he's going to campaign for his worth, and he's worth a whole heck of a lot. I think most people don't realize just how good Brandon Aiyuk is. Well, I can help you realize how good Brandon Aiyuk is. This, and the reason might be because there's a fixation on raw stats. He ranked number 7 in receiving yardage, but he didn't have as many targets. He had the 20th most targets in the league, but 7th most yards. That just shows you that there's a disconnect there. We need to look at efficiency, and this is going to be a better metric of looking at specifically what Brandon Aiyuk brings to the table. You've got separation grade on the x-axis and catch point grade, so how well he's catching the football, and yak grade on the y-axis. Look at this. Brandon Aiyuk is an outlier. He has an argument to be the highest paid receiver in football. Point blank. Will he be the highest paid receiver in football? Well, it's going to depend on which metric you look at. I think somebody was saying that Chad Ochocinco or Chad Johnson, whatever his name is now, in that video was encouraging Brandon Aiyuk to go for 30 to 32 million a year. People need to understand that the average per year can be inflated with funny money. If Brandon Aiyuk wants a vanity deal like Tyreek Hill's, maybe he can get a vanity deal and the 49ers won't mind giving it to him, because a lot of that money at the end of the vanity deal that made Tyreek Hill's $30 million per year probably won't be earned. If you look at Hill's deal, I showed it in a video the other day. The last season in that contract has a base salary scheduled for $43.9 million, which is a joke considering the wide receiver position. That's more than most quarterbacks, right? But that is not guaranteed. So the only reason they put that $43.9 million at the very end is to inflate it to $30 million per year. So it would average out to become the first $30 million wide receiver. If that's really important to Brandon Aiyuk, because it seems that it's really important to somebody like Chad Ochocinco who was interviewing him, then they could tack on whatever they want at the end, and he could get over the 30 million to 32 million. But for all intents and purposes, it won't really matter, right? Because the money won't be earned at the end of the deal. There's no way that that would be guaranteed at the end of the deal. So to me, I don't think that Brandon Aiyuk is interested in a vanity deal. I think he wants substance because he's a substantive player. This is the production. It's way up here. You saw his run blocking ability. I think he's the best in the NFL there. He's one of the best separators in the NFL. As you can see, the separation grade on that's further to the right on the x-axis. He is absolutely everything that the 49ers stand for. Remember that he had to work his way into Kyle Shanahan's good graces. He had to prove that he could be that dependable receiver. And not only has he done that, he's turned into an absolute A-lister. I think this is a player that is substantive, that's going to want a substantive deal. It's going to be somewhere between 25, 27 million a year, but a lot of real money. It's not going to be a funny money-based deal. They're going to have to guarantee Brandon Aiyuk some money. I probably think over $40 million in fully guaranteed money for him. That is elite receiver money. He is an elite receiver, but the 49ers are in excellent position because an extension will actually lower his salary cap hit in the 2024 season. You're going to look at the 49ers salary cap situation right here. I can illustrate that for you. There's been a lot of misinformation on this front as well. I saw somebody tweet the other day that there's no way they could pay Brandon Aiyuk because it would make the receiving room cap hit way too big. And the receiving room cap hit is currently $46.6 million. And whoever said that the receiving room cap hit would go up if they paid Brandon Aiyuk. That is completely false. People don't understand how contracts work. It would actually go down because you would be able to spread out Brandon Aiyuk's money. Right now, he's under contract on the fifth-year option for $14.1 million. As you can see right here, my cursor is hovering over it. If you pay him on a backloaded deal, which is what almost every single 49ers mega contract has looked like, you could probably lower his cap hit to around $8 million. So say right here, you have $28.5 million entering the season in my cap projection. Say that you pay Brandon Aiyuk a contract that lowers his 2024 cap hit to $8 million. Look at the calculations they just made. They would have $34.6 million in cap space. It is the move to make if you're in win now mode for the 49ers. It's the move to make if you're in win perpetually mode too. It's bottom line is the move to make, which is why Brandon Aiyuk's thoughts in his first public appearance since the end of the season really did echo John Lynch's thoughts at the NFL owners meetings. Let's go back and play John Lynch's thoughts.
Negotiating a deal right now, or just talking?
We're talking with these guys, and trying to talk about some parameters of some things. And I'm not going to get into, never do, but we're having discussions. That's a good thing.
When you talk about a guy like Brandon, do you think about you have a nucleus of guys here now that have been around for a while that are maybe getting a little bit older, of who your next nucleus of guys are going to be? Do you think in terms of that with a guy like Brandon? Is that part of the?
Yeah, I mean there's nothing better than drafting a guy, developing a guy, watching him flourish, and then rewarding him. That's really what we love to do, and so he's a great illustration of that. And there's been a lot. You guys have watched it transpire. Brandon came in a really good player, but Kyle has a high standard for receivers. We all do, and so it wasn't just instant. Okay, but. Because they're pushed and demanded so much, he's a great example of what can happen when you mix that ability, talent, drive with real high expectations. And he's become a tremendous player. And, he's earned everything that's going to come his way. And, we're really, really proud of him for that.
So John Lynch and Brandon Aiyuk are saying the same exact thing, which is what you need for a deal, right? Both sides have to be on the same page. It is only a matter of time now. In fact, I would say I've covered every single one of these 49ers contract extensions, from George Kittle to Fred Warner to Deebo Samuel to Nick Bosa and now to Brandon Aiyuk. I would say that this Aiyuk situation at this point in the offseason is ahead of where those other situations were at this point in the offseason based on the public messaging. We can go back to the George Kittle deal. That one started relatively ugly. If you went back and read Mike Silver's account of those negotiations, the 49ers lowballed Kittle at the start. At least that's what Kittle's camp thought. And they didn't get that done until, August in 2020. Fred Warner's camp didn't say anything throughout the entire process. We finally heard of his extension in August of 2021. 2022 was the Deebo Samuel year. That obviously was much uglier. That one was further behind than any of these at this point in the season. Deebo Samuel requested that trade early in the offseason. Then there was Nick Bosa. There was a lot of radio silence there, but that one ended up in a holdout. Missed all training camp, didn't sign until right before the 49ers started the season against the Steelers. And I think that it was very clear that it was going to take a long time. John Lynch was, at this point of the season, even earlier in the offseason, he was talking about how he was going to need some deadline pressure to get the deal done. So you knew that it was going to be a marathon with Nick Bosa. So all four of those instances, I don't think had anything as positive from the perspective of trying to get a deal done publicly said as this Brandon Aiyuk situation, with Aiyuk coming out today saying that he hopes that something gets done. Aiyuk confirming that his people are talking to the 49ers. John Lynch confirming the same thing a couple days ago. Brandon Aiyuk even said that he was in the building. He said, when I was in the building earlier this morning. So he is in the building and people are talking. That is way more validation than we had in any of these other situations. So to me, it's a lock. It's both sides, and it could be unlocked. I get it. Curveballs can be thrown, but right now both sides are locked in negotiation to reach a deal. And I think that there's a good chance this deal's reached much sooner than the other ones that I just listed for that reason, because it's ahead of where those other ones were at this point in the process. Again, a lot of people don't realize how good Brandon Aiyuk is. And I'm going to show you one more of these graphs right now. And we could go back to the original staggering one. This right here shows you the unique tandem that the 49ers have in Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel. Success rate when targeted is on the x-axis. Look at Brandon Aiyuk. The success rate when targeting him, the efficiency is completely off the charts. Way better than everybody else. He's also really good in average yak over expectation, which is on the y-axis. Only a couple receivers better than him. But one of them that's better than him is the best yak receiver that we've probably ever seen in Deebo Samuel. So you've got to be good after the catch in this offense. That's just the way that it's set up. But the fact they've got a historically good guy, an outlier in Deebo Samuel up here, and then they have Brandon Aiyuk, who's good at everything over here. Yes, it's worth it to pay both of these guys. We haven't even talked about the Brock Purdy context here, but Brandon Aiyuk and Brock Purdy, they're a good bet to grow together. You're likely going to have to pay Brock Purdy next offseason. You want to have to pay Brock Purdy next offseason. In fact, this guy right here, his name is Jed York. He's the owner of the 49ers. He said that it would be a good problem to have to pay Brock Purdy next offseason. So to get to that point, you want to make sure that his best X receiver is still around and still happy and producing for perpetuity. Deebo Samuel has more of a shelf life based on his style of play. I'm not saying that it's expired yet, but obviously when you look at sustainability, when you look at the physical style, the unique style that Deebo Samuel plays with, I think nothing is more jarring than this right here. Look at his dot way up there. But when you look at the style that Deebo Samuel plays with and you look at the style that Brandon Aiyuk plays with, I think it's fair to extrapolate that Brandon Aiyuk is probably going to be a more sustainably productive receiver over the longer stretch of time. But Deebo Samuel, the battering ram, is also extremely important to the adaptability of this 49ers offense. If you are in win now mode, if you're trying to win a Super Bowl now, and obviously you've gotten so damn close in several seasons now if you're the 49ers, you want both of these weapons on your football team. You want the guy that's doing special stuff up here, and you want the guy that's doing special stuff over here to support the quarterback who's an MVP finalist and the NFL leader in QBR. You had the number one offense in football last season, so you want to keep that offense together. So it makes complete sense that Brandon Aiyuk wants the same thing as the 49ers, because it's in his interest to be part of the best offense in the league, with one of the best play callers in the league, with one of the best quarterbacks in the league, with one of the best teammates in the league in Deebo Samuel, as far as the receiving tandem goes. And there's other guys too, and George Kittle, obviously, Kyle Juszczyk, Jauan Jennings. I mean, that offense is absolutely loaded. So it makes complete sense from that perspective, and it makes complete sense from the 49ers perspective as well. From the financial one, I cannot emphasize this enough. There's so much misinformation out there, but the 49ers would actually lower Brandon Aiyuk's 2024 cap hit if they did extend him, which would give them more financial flexibility this season in a win-now year. That is important. You'd rather have that money pushed out into the future. The 49ers have a whole system and plan and just a modus operandi, if you will, with this cap surfing. They're expecting the cap to continue rising, so they're pushing money out to the future. It's like taking out a zero-interest loan. The downside is a potential one. If the cap stops increasing or doesn't increase as much as you think it will, then all of a sudden you can reach the point where the sink overflows. But so far, the 49ers actually haven't gotten particularly close to that dire point. So far, they're surfing the wave well. There will be an inflection point next offseason for the 49ers when it comes to the salary cap because of the Brock Purdy deal. And that inflection point might lead to them having to make a decision on somebody like Deebo Samuel. But they're not at that point yet. Right now, they're focused on 2024. That's what I'm focused on. I'm here to cover 2024. I'm here to cover how the 49ers can keep both of these receivers happy and on the team. I'm here to cover how good Brandon Aiyuk is in the top right. And hey, Deebo Samuel's also a top right guy. Got to give him some credit here. Why is Jamar Chase's logo a 49ers logo? Or is that Jauan Jennings right there? Do you guys see this? It looks like Jamar Chase is, I guess that's his logo with the Bengals. But I don't see a 49ers name by this one. I'm guessing that's Jauan Jennings. So the 49ers have three receivers in the top right. Jennings, Deebo Samuel, and then you could go all the way over here. I mean, Tyreek is an outlier too. Look where Brandon Aiyuk is at. People need to realize how good this guy is. All right, 49ers Q&A here on the channel. We're early on a Friday morning. I'm sure you guys like this news. Those of you who have just joined, get your questions ready. I am going to give you the Brandon Aiyuk video one more time.
We're trying to get work done. They're trying to get work done. I mean, they trying to get work done. That's all I can say. Y'all know how it gets. I don't even want to get too far into that. But I'm just trying to get like what Ocho just said. I'm trying to get what I deserve. I felt like this season playing football, I figured out who I was as a person, as a player, what I bring to the table, what I bring to the locker room, what I bring to the organization, and just the value I hold when I walk in that building, because people gonna follow me because I've done it the right way since I've been in that building from the first day I walked in there to when I was in there earlier this morning. Done it the right way. So, and if they don't see it worth in that, that's all it is. That's all it is. It ain't nothing else. It ain't nothing else besides that. But I can't, like I said, I can't get into it. We got professionals working on both sides, so hopefully we can come to a professional agreement and continue to play professional football.
The deal right now, or just talking?
We're talking with these guys, and trying to talk about some parameters of some things, and I'm not going to get into it, never do, but we're having discussions. That's a good thing.
When you talk about a guy like Brandon, do you think about, like, you have a nucleus of guys here now that have been around for a while that are maybe getting a little bit older, of like who your next nucleus of guys are going to be? Like, do you think in terms of that with a guy like Brandon? Is that part of the?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing better than drafting a guy, developing a guy, watching him flourish, and then rewarding him. That's really what we'd love to do, and so he's a great illustration of that. And there's been a lot. You guys have watched it transpire. Brandon came in a really good player, but Kyle has a high standard for receivers. We all do, and so it wasn't just like instant. But because they're pushed and demanded so much, he's a great example of what can happen when you mix that ability, talent, drive with real high expectations. And he's become a tremendous player. And, he's earned everything that's going to come his way. And, we're really, really proud of him for that.
He's earned everything that's going to come his way, and the 49ers are proud of him. I mean, both sides are speaking as if this is well on its way to getting done. And, hey, they might not even be at firm parameters yet. I think Lynch said they're discussing parameters right now. It might still take a month or two. It might take 3. We're still about 5 months away from the point where Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel signed their contracts. Bosa was even later than Samuel. So my point is there's a lot of time. Would you like to get it done sooner? Of course. I think the 49ers thought that both Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel, both those guys have now acknowledged this. They thought that both of them were a little slowed down, especially early in their respective seasons after signing the contract, due to the fact that it was a cloud hanging over their heads during the course of the offseason. So you want to get this done sooner. I know that Lynch and Ryan Clark, Brandon Aiyuk's agent, are close. I think that might help matters as well. But what really helps matters is the mutual respect and the very open desire from both sides to get a deal done. And it just makes too much sense. So let's get the questions in on this beautiful Friday morning. Post your questions, says Mike. Hello to somebody in France. I was very close to coming to France this offseason. I don't think I'm going to make it. I will be in Europe, but France, unfortunately, is not going to be part of the agenda. At least it won't be in May. Maybe it will be in July. But I know there's a 49ers France account, which I follow, and they speak in French, which is really cool. So anytime I need to see 49ers thoughts in French, 49ers France gets the job done. I'm sure that you follow it. Bring back, you want to bring back Factor Cap, huh? Yeah, let's do it. With the duck walking around, we do need to bring back Factor Cap. That always seems to be perfect to invalidate rumors. And gosh, there were some bad ones with this Brandon Aiyuk situation. All the trade rumors and reports. Of course, the 49ers are going to pick up the phone if somebody calls, and of course they'll be blown away if they're blown away by a offer that's like a king's ransom. That's what I've said throughout. Then they're going to listen to it, and it could change their mind. But people need to start living in reality, right? And if you live in reality, then you realize that the receiver market is such that it's very and the 49ers receiving situation is such, given the fact that they're in a win now mode, and Brandon Aiyuk has built up the prolific production that we see from him now. It's such that there is no realistic deal out there that would move the 49ers off their spot. You can't spend a bunch of time developing a new receiver if you trade Brandon Aiyuk away and expect to be as good in 2024. And you need to be good in 2024 because you're trying to kick the door down and win a Super Bowl. This is about retaining your core. Also, every single one of these contracts has gotten done. Every single player that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have drafted has been extended when his rookie contract has been up, as far as an A-list player. If you fall into that A-list category, they will reward you. Do I have a favorite banh mi sandwich? Yes, Saigon Sandwich over on Larkin in San Francisco. It's in the Tenderloin. It's right by Little Saigon is what they call it, but Saigon Sandwich. Those sandwiches used to be like $3. They might be $4 now. Maybe $4.50. It might be the best deal that you'll find in San Francisco. Steve believes Deebo might be a top kick returner next year. And hey, maybe given the kick return rules, that's going to extend Deebo Samuel's lifespan of big-time value to the 49ers because they're going to be a whole lot more like running plays. I said that as soon as the rule was passed. I thought Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey would be an amazing tandem back there. Chris asks, isn't there a more professional way for players to request more money than posting stories on Instagram? He says it seems very childish. I mean, yeah, it's not going to move the needle in any which way. I think over the course of the offseason, too, some of these guys are just having fun with it as well. I wouldn't read too much into it. The problem is that the public in general hangs onto every single post and every single word as if it has greater meaning than it really does. Just because a guy says something with emojis on Instagram doesn't mean that it can change the tenor of an actual adult negotiation. And not every single YouTube video, but so many YouTube videos, so many tweets based off of some of these Instagram posts give these posts way too much power. People even gave Deebo Samuel's trade request way too much power, and that was obviously a much bigger statement last year. But the fact of the matter is that Deebo Samuel was still under contract with the 49ers, and Brandon Aiyuk is still under contract with the 49ers. So at the end of the day, no matter what he posts, he's still under contract with the 49ers. For all contractual intents and purposes, the team is in the driver's seat. So at the end of the day, you just have to look at social media noise for what it is. It's noise and nothing more. And I think at that point, it won't really matter as much. And then you could argue if it's childish or not. I honestly don't care. I look at what matters contractually, and then I filter that out, or I filter out the stuff that doesn't matter, and I filter in the stuff that does. And that's how I analyze these contracts. What I see a Jennings deal potentially landing at, we'll see if they can get a long-term deal done this year. If they don't get a long-term deal done, then it's going to be a year, $4.9 million on the restricted free agent tender. But Jauan Jennings might think that, hey, I could get a lot of money as an unrestricted free agent next year. If he believes that the 49ers can't offer him something that will match or get close to matching what he can make next year as an unrestricted free agent, I don't think he'll want to sign a long-term deal. I think he'll be okay with playing this year at the $4.9 million and then test his worth on the open market next season. I mean, you talk about it being really hard to pay two receivers. I think the 49ers are totally fine with paying two guys. Paying three guys is obviously much, much more difficult. Now, we can see how the situation develops between now and next year. Say that they do part ways with Deebo Samuel next offseason. All of a sudden, maybe Jauan Jennings is somebody they're willing to pay a little bit more. So the 49ers have him as a restricted free agent this year. They have a lot of power in their hands to be able to potentially keep him for this season. They tendered him the $4.9 million. We're waiting on word to see if Jauan Jennings will officially sign that tender. I think everything is trending in the right direction. They could still be working on that potential long-term deal, so there is no rush on the 49ers end. But we will see what the future plans at receiver hold as well. And I think there are a lot of moving pieces in that discussion involving both Deebo Samuel and Jauan Jennings. Do I see Jauan being a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 on another team? Maybe a 2 on another team. I don't know about 1, but maybe a 2. And that's the operative question here, right? If he thinks that that's his worth and that he's only going to be a 3 on the 49ers and they're only going to pay him as a 3, then for his career, for his family, he has every right to hold out, or not actually hold out, but wait until unrestricted free agency. So you can see if somebody else will pay him to be a wide receiver too. So I think that's part of the dance here in the restricted free agent negotiations with Jauan Jennings. Was Eric Armstead's departure a bad one? Or did social media blow it out of proportion? Well, social media blows everything out of proportion. It was business. There are pretty charged emotions on both sides of this. But I talked about this yesterday with the Eric Armstead situation. He said that the 49ers offered him $6 million for 2024 with incentives up to $8 million for 2024. The 49ers initially had him budgeted on the contract for $18 million, but that was not guaranteed, and obviously that number was too high for Eric Armstead. He ended up signing with Jacksonville for $14 million over 2 seasons. So, $28 million over 2, $14 million each over 2. So on one end, you had what the 49ers offered. They offered the $6 million upwards to $8 million. On the other end, you had what the 49ers originally had under contract to Eric Armstead, but not guaranteed, $18 million. So Eric Armstead said, I don't like how low this offer is. You guys can up your offer to me. We don't know if they did. He didn't divulge that. But I would rather test my value. I'd rather bet on myself and see where in between this range my value is. And Jacksonville, the GM who actually initially drafted Eric Armstead and Trent Baalke, offered over here at $14 million. So good for Eric Armstead. Probably good for the 49ers, to be honest, because I don't know if their budget was much higher than $8 or $9 million. Because they're paying Malik Collins, his replacement, $8.47 million. And they picked him up at a discount because they didn't have to pay a signing bonus because they traded with the Houston Texans for him. So if the 49ers budget was only 8 or 9 million for that defensive tackle position, considering the fact that they have to keep the Brock Purdy situation in mind and the Brandon Aiyuk situation, since we're talking about that, if the budget was only 8 or 9 million, I understand why their initial offer was only 6 to 8 million to Eric Armstead. Now, he said that he felt disrespected. He has every right to feel whatever he wants. But at the end of the day, business is business. And if this was their upper limit or close to it, then I understand why they went away from Eric Armstead. Again, the 49ers have been prioritizing durability. Malik Collins has brought that. Eric Armstead hasn't over the past 2 seasons. The 49ers are in a situation where they're having to look at the whole roster, not just the defensive tackle position. They're already paying Javon Hargrave a lot of money at that DT spot. And obviously, they're much more tied to him since that contract was given out much more recently. They've got Nick Bosa up on the offensive line. None of this denigrates what Eric Armstead did for the 49ers. He even played well through a torn meniscus in the playoffs. That wasn't a bad decision for the 49ers to move on from DeForest Buckner in 2020 and go with Eric Armstead. In fact, it really paid off for them over the course of time. They got a player on a cheaper deal who was very productive for them. Armstead was extremely productive over the past few years. He was the catalyst to the number 1 run defense in 2021. In 21, before Armstead moved to defensive tackle, they were the number 20 run defense by EPA. After he moved to defensive tackle, they were the number 1 run defense. He was productive. He was so productive, setting the table on the interior for the team. But then he ran into those injury issues and the plantar fasciitis and obviously the torn meniscus over the past couple years, and the equation changed. But with the whole Buckner-Armstead thing in 2020, and I think that's why a lot of the Armstead discussion now is so charged, because people feel that they made the wrong decision there. I think it's really clear that they made the right one. They kept a cheaper player and got a first-round pick. The decision that didn't go as well for the 49ers was the Javon Kinlaw draft pick. If they pick somebody like Tristan Wirfs with the pick that they got, the first rounder they got in exchange for DeForest Buckner, the entire narrative is different. So the process was really sound, but Eric Armstead still took a lot of flack for it just because the 49ers did not draft somebody who suitably replaced DeForest Buckner when they drafted Javon Kinlaw instead. But first-round value was first-round value, and it was a tremendous business decision from the 49ers at the time. So Armstead had to live with that throughout his entire career. People never fully acknowledged how productive he was, but he did pick up a lot of money from the 49ers along the way. He was the blueprint. And then I think he was the blueprint all the way up until the availability was not what the 49ers needed it to be. He missed those 13 games of the past 2 seasons. Bill Walsh would always move on from a player a year too early rather than a year too late. And I think that was the philosophy with Eric Armstead, especially since they were able to bring in a cost-efficient replacement in Malik Collins. So anyway, that's the Armstead situation. You could watch the whole video on that from yesterday. Hope everybody's having a good morning. Brandon Aiyuk, the deal's a lock for the 49ers. He was on a podcast yesterday, and he said that he's in the building and his people are talking with the 49ers. He wants to be paid his worth, doesn't everybody? But this thing is moving full speed ahead. This is great news for the 49ers, with the key being right there at the bottom. Those 2 things are happening. We didn't know those 2 things were happening, and they weren't happening in recent contract negotiations. So this is great for the 49ers. Hope you enjoyed the morning update. We will talk to you all very soon.